The Royal Australian Air Force's worst peacetime disaster. Papua New Guinea, 1972. The de Havilland Canada Caribou was a popular twin-engine short takeoff and land and light transport cargo aircraft, developed mainly for military operations and still in use in small numbers today as a rugged bush aircraft. Primary users were the Royal Canadian Air Force, the USA Army and Air Force, and the Royal Australian Air Force. The Caribou's first flight was in 1958 at the then de Havilland Downsview Airport, northwest of Toronto, Canada. Over 300 Caribous were made at Downsview from 1958 to 1968. Sadly, this historic airport was closed in 2024 and is being progressively transformed for residential, commercial, cultural and recreational purposes. But its history is being recognised through its name YZD, its former IATA code, and repurposed runway and hangars. The RAAF took delivery of 29 Caribous in 1964-65 to replace the Dakotas, DC-3s, mainly here at RAAF Base Richmond, New South Wales, but some went direct to Vietnam for the RAAF's participation in the war there. Caribous were in great service with the RAAF for 45 years, up until around 2009, the longest record of constant RAAF operational service of any aircraft type to date. The RAAF operated Caribous in Papua New Guinea from 1965 to 1975. Detachment A of No. 38 Squadron was based here in Port Moresby, flying these versatile STOL transports to supply remote outposts and train crews for tropical rugged environments. Because of its unique ability to land on rugged, unpaved bush airstrips, the Caribou was a vital workhorse during Australia's administration of PNG. During its decade of service there, the fleet racked up 27,000 flight hours. The treacherous mountainous terrain, extreme altitudes, challenging landing strips, and unpredictable, rapidly changeable weather in PNG made operations dangerous. As well as less serious incidents, 3 RAAF Caribous were destroyed in PNG. While aircraft losses at Porgera, 1965, and Tapini, 1968, involved no fatalities, the Kudjeru Gap crash, 1972, resulted in 25 fatalities, making it Australia's most lethal peacetime military air disaster. We will now look at those 3 crashes, with a particular focus on the last one. Crash 1, Porgera 1965. The former Porgera airstrip, directly ahead in the middle of the village markets, was built in 1961 to enable the Australian colonial administration to operate in the region. It was dangerous because of its high elevation, 10% slope, mountains at one end, and a cliff drop at the other end. In 1965, a RAAF Caribou overshot the runway and collided with an embankment during an uphill landing. No deaths, but the aircraft was a wreck. With the opening in 1990 and subsequent expansion of the Porgera gold mine, one of the largest in the world, the airstrip was closed and replaced by Carrick Airstrip a little further away. Crash 2, Tapini 1968. Tapini airstrip was built in the 1950s-60s Australian colonial period. It is one of the most challenging airstrips in the world because of steep slope, mountains at one end, and a cliff drop at the other end. For years, Tapini was a training hotspot for the RAAF, with pilots using Caribous to practice difficult mountain takeoffs and landings. In 1969, a RAAF Caribou undershot the runway during an uphill landing. No deaths, but the aircraft was a wreck. Crash 3, Kudjeru Gap 1972. RAAF Caribou, A4-233. Departed late 2 p.m., the 28th of August 1972 in good weather. The aircraft was on a flight from Lae to Port Moresby with 3 Australian crew members, an Australian Army officer and 25 cadets from the PNG Army, aged 16 to 18. All were killed except for 4 cadets. Beautiful former Lae Airport no longer exists, replaced by Nadzab Airport further inland in the 1970s. The flight was part of Australia's partnership with PNG and was a way to provide assistance by reuniting young men with their families in Port Moresby after the completion of a PNG cadet training camp in Lae. Nadzab Airport, further inland, replaced Lae Airport in the 1970s. Nadzab was a major Allied airbase, with 4 runways, during World War II. See my video of the 21st of March, 2022. The aircraft passed over Bulolo and then WOW airstrips in reasonable weather, heading towards the Kudjeru Gap in the treacherous Owen Stanley Ranges that cut right through the middle of PNG. After passing over WOW in good, but overcast weather, the pilot entered the Kudjeru Gap Valley and the weather conditions worsened rapidly. While flying through the gap, the pilot became concerned the descending cloud was going to shroud his vision of the valley ahead, and decided to turn around. He should have turned back earlier, or landed at WOW or Bulolo. At an altitude of 5,000 feet, in a climbing turn back, the right wing struck trees and the aircraft crashed on the slope of a mountain, about 50 meters below the summit. The pilot was unable to turn tightly enough in the confined valley, nor outclimb the rising terrain, and so impacted the valley walls. It was a classic case of inadvertent VFR into IMC and a controlled flight into terrain. When the aircraft failed to arrive, a massive air search was launched. It was not until 3 days later that search parties located 4 surviving cadets who had managed to leave the wreckage and trek through the dense jungle to seek help. A 5th cadet was found alive at the wreckage, but tragically passed away before he could be winched to safety by rescue Iroquois helicopters working from a makeshift helipad in bad weather and difficult terrain of steep, dense, remote jungle. One survivor was Cadet Patrick Taugao, aged 17. Patrick was awarded a George Medal for his bravery in attempting to save those still alive after the crash. He led and cared for 3 other cadet survivors until rescued, and pointed the way to the crash site, which could barely be seen amongst the tall, thick trees. For the RAAF, the crash reinforced the dangers of mountain flying in PNG and led to tighter weather minima, improved terrain awareness procedures, and stricter operational decisions in marginal conditions. The failure of the manually triggered beacon contributed to the later adoption of automatic emergency locator transmitters on military aircraft. The tragedy also prompted closer scrutiny of transporting school cadets on military flights, particularly through high-risk terrain. Risk assessment, supervision, and emergency planning around cadet activities in PNG were strengthened. To finish up, enjoy some real-life footage of RAAF Caribous.
There was no other aircraft in the RAAF inventory that could get troops into and out of small, tight airfields other than the Caribou.
During the Second World War, the Royal Australian Air Force operated the Douglas Dakota, a tough, reliable, twin-engine transport aircraft based on the DC-3 airliner. By the early 1960s, the ageing Dakota had been partially replaced by the C-130 Hercules, but there was still a requirement for a small, tactical transport that could operate close to the front lines. The aircraft chosen was the de Havilland, Canada, Caribou.
Caribou was designed for short takeoff and landing from rough fields, which the Dakota could not do. The aircraft also had fully reversing propellers. The Dakota did not, and you could pull the fully loaded Caribou up in around 1,000 feet.
Just 5 weeks after arriving in Australia, in May 1964, the first 3 aircraft were deployed to the war in Vietnam. Later, deliveries flew straight to Vung Tau airfield. The Caribou quickly demonstrated its ability to deliver troops and supplies to short, rudimentary airstrips that were inaccessible to other aircraft. The Caribou is a short takeoff and landing, or STOL, aircraft. It has rugged, long-stroke landing gear, 2 powerful engines with exhaust that exit over the wing, full-span slotted flaps and rear-opening ramp doors. RAAF Transport Flight Vietnam, later No. 35 Squadron, became affectionately known as Wallaby Airlines. Crews worked 12 to 14-hour shifts, flying up to 10 sorties a day.
The Caribou was a hands-on aircraft. There was no autopilot. You had to fly the aircraft all the time you were airborne. And at the end of a long day, you were worn out. It was like driving, if you like, an old truck.
The squadron and its dedicated ground crews quickly built a reputation for efficiency.
They had a pretty fierce reputation for getting in and out of places, particularly in bad weather. They were roundly applauded by the Americans for the work they did.
12 Caribou saw active service in Vietnam. They were the first RAAF aircraft to arrive and the last to leave in February 1972. During the 1975 East Timor Civil War, Caribou supported Red Cross relief operations. A detachment of 38 Squadron Caribou also operated from Port Moresby for 10 years, from 1965.
It's done famine and flood relief throughout the region and throughout Australia. We also worked with the United Nations on the India-Pakistan line of control for a couple of years. Disaster relief, famine relief or support out of places like Dili, Port Moresby, Vanuatu, and it could get into places where a C-130 couldn't, or where a rotary wing aircraft couldn't operate.
As the Caribou approached the end of its service life, there was no fixed-wing aircraft that could directly replace it. Nothing could match its ability to carry a useful tactical load in and out of the most rugged airstrips on Earth. The Caribou finally ended its career on the 27th of November 2009, after 45 years. Vietnam veteran A4-140 was flown to Canberra to join the Australian War Memorial Collection.
We should remember the Caribou with pride. It's done some amazing work around Australia and the region, and it sounds damn fine.